The great hall froze in silence. Daniel's voice echoed off the tall stone walls. His words were sharp, steady, and louder than the masters had expected. For the first time, a human worker stood against the sacred law. The masters leaned forward, their golden crowns catching the firelight. Their eyes burned with fury. "You dare confess before us? You dare break the oldest rule of this estate?" One of them thundered. Daniel stood tall, his fists clenched, his heart pounding. But his voice did not waver. "Yes, I dare. Because your rule is not law, it is chains, and chains are meant to be broken." The crowd of maids gasped softly. Though none dared raise their eyes, they had never heard such words spoken aloud. The guards marched forward, glowing staffs in hand, ready to strike. Lyra's silver eyes widened. Her body trembled. She wanted to scream, to beg him to run, but her voice caught in her throat. Instead, a tear rolled down her cheek. Her heart ached with both fear and something new. Hope. One of the masters pointed toward Daniel. "Seize him. Show every servant what happens when kindness becomes rebellion." The guards rushed forward, but Daniel did not step back. He lifted his chin. His voice rang out louder than their marching steps. "If you punish me, then let them see the truth. Let them see that love is not weakness. It is strength." The words struck like lightning. A murmur rippled through the maids, tiny sounds of breath breaking the silence. Some dared to lift their eyes, their silver glow flickering brighter. The guards seized Daniel, their staffs sparking against his arms, forcing him down to his knees. Yet even his pain burned through him. He kept his gaze on Lyra, his voice still steady. "You are not a shadow, Lyra. You are not a servant without a name. You are alive, and you are free." The masters roared with fury. "Silence him." But before the final blow could fall, something shifted. Lyra stepped forward. Her trembling legs moved without permission. Her heart pounding in her chest, she fell to her knees beside him. Her voice broke as she cried out, "If you punish him, then punish me too, for I love him." The hall gasped. The sound echoed like a storm breaking the sky. Every maid froze, every guard hesitated. Even the masters leaned back in shock. Her words had shattered the silence more deeply than Daniel's defiance. It was not just a whisper of rebellion anymore. It was truth spoken aloud. Daniel looked at her, his chest tightening. His eyes softened, even as pain burned through his arms. She had broken the rule, she had chosen him. The masters recovered quickly, their voices booming. "Then both of you will suffer. Let this be the lesson to all." The guards raised their staffs again. But something strange happened. The maids, rows of silent women who had been shadows their whole lives, began to lift their heads. Their silver eyes glowed brighter, brighter than ever before. One by one they stepped forward, their voices trembling but rising together. "If you punish them, then punish us too." The hall shook with the sound. Dozens of voices, once chained, now united. The masters looked around in shock. The glow of the maids' eyes lit the hall like fire. Their silence was gone, replaced by courage. Daniel rose slowly to his feet, despite the pain. He stood beside Lyra, his voice steady. "You see, your rule is broken, not by me, not by her, but by all of them. You cannot dim every light. You cannot silence every voice." The masters shouted in rage, but for the first time, their power trembled. The guards faltered, unsure whether to strike. Their eyes flicked nervously at the glowing tide of maids standing tall. In that moment, Daniel took Lyra's hand. Their fingers locked, not in secret but openly before all. "We are not afraid," he said, his voice echoing. "Not anymore." The hall erupted with the sound of voices. Maids crying out, "Why, we are not afraid." The air shimmered with their glow. The chains of silence were gone. The masters retreated, their golden crowns darkened by the storm they could not control. For centuries they had ruled with fear. But in one night fear had been broken. When the guards finally lowered their staffs, when the shouting faded, the estate was no longer the same. The rule that forbade love had been shattered, not by violence but by courage. Later, in the quiet after the storm, Daniel and Lyra stood by the fountain in the garden, the same place where fear had once ruled their whispers. Now it felt different, the air felt lighter. The walls no longer pressed down with silence. Lyra looked at him with tears in her silver eyes, but this time they were not from fear. "You risked everything," she whispered. "Why?" Daniel smiled faintly, his hand brushing hers gently. "Because some things are worth breaking every rule for." She leaned closer, her trembling finally gone. And for the first time, under the open sky, they shared a kiss, not hidden, not afraid, but free. And around them, In the shadows of the estate, the maids watched with glowing eyes, no longer silent, no longer shadows, but alive. The rule was broken, and love, once forbidden, had become their freedom. The estate slept under silver moonlight. The great halls were dark, the masters behind locked doors, and the gardens glowed faintly with the light of strange flowers. It was in this hour of silence that Daniel walked, his steps slow, his heart heavy with the warnings that echoed in his mind. He had tried to stay away. He had tried to bury the thought of her, but every time he closed his eyes, he saw Lyra's trembling hands, her lowered gaze, her silver eyes hiding secrets. He could not ignore it any longer. At the far end of the garden, by the stone fountain where water shimmered like glass, he saw her. Lyra stood alone, her hair catching the moonlight like a veil. She looked around nervously, as if expecting shadows to rise from every corner. When she saw him, her breath caught. She shook her head, whispering sharply, "You should not be here. If they find us, they will end us both." Daniel stepped closer, his voice low but steady. "Then let them try." "I will not let them end you." Her lips trembled. She looked down at her hands, twisting them together. "Why do you not understand? Even meeting like this is enough for punishment. One word spoken between us is a crime." Daniel's eyes burned with anger. "Then let me commit the crime, because silence is killing you. And it is killing me too." Lyra's chest rose and fell quickly. For a moment she almost turned away, but something inside her broke free. She stepped closer, her voice fragile. "I dream sometimes. I dream of a place outside these walls, a place where no rule can chain me, where I can walk without fear, where I can look at someone and not be punished for it." Daniel's heart tightened. He reached out but stopped just short of touching her. "Then tell me, Lyra, if that place were real, would you go there with me?" Her silver eyes lifted, and for the first time they glowed not with fear but with longing. She whispered, "Yes." The word hung in the air like a spark. Dangerous yet beautiful. But the sound of crunching footsteps shattered the moment. Lyra gasped and pulled back. Her eyes widened in terror. In the distance, guards with glowing staffs walked along the path. Searching the shadows, Daniel's hand moved quickly. He pulled her behind the stone fountain, pressing against the cold wall as the guards passed. The glow of their staffs lit the night. The air grew thick with tension. Lyra's heart pounded so loudly she was sure they would hear it. She pressed her back against the stone. Trembling, Daniel leaned close, his breath steady near her ear. "Stay still," he whispered. The guards walked past slowly, their eyes sweeping the garden. One paused, his gaze lingering near the fountain. For a terrifying moment, Daniel thought they had been caught. But then the guard turned and followed the others. The sound of their footsteps faded into the night. Lyra's body sagged with relief. She looked at Daniel, her voice barely a breath. "Do you see now? Even the stars are against us. The walls listen, the ground watches. We cannot escape this rule." Daniel shook his head, determination burning in his eyes. "No, Lyra. The rule is only strong because everyone bows to it, but rules can be broken, and chains can be shattered." Tears welled in her silver eyes. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe there was hope. But the fear drilled into her heart for years kept whispering otherwise. They stood there in silence, the night around them heavy and fragile. Then slowly, as if drawn by something stronger than fear, Daniel reached for her hand, his fingers brushed hers. Warm and steady, her breath caught. She should have pulled away. She should have remembered the punishment. But she did not. Instead, her trembling hand rested in his. For the first time in her life, she felt what it was like to be held, to be seen not as a servant, but as someone worthy of care. The moment was short. A distant horn echoed through the estate, calling the guards to shift their watch. Lyra quickly pulled her hand away, her chest rising with panic. "You must go. If they see you here again, they will know." Daniel nodded, but his eyes stayed on her. "We will meet again, Lyra. No matter what rule stands in the way." She shook her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. "If we keep this path, we will be destroyed." But even as she said it, her heart knew the truth. The path had already begun. The forbidden meeting had happened. The rule was already broken. That night, as Daniel returned to his quarters, he could still feel her hand in his. The warmth stayed with him, burning stronger than the fear. He lay awake, whispering to himself, "No chains will stop this. Not even theirs." And in her small dark room, Lyra pressed her trembling hands to her chest. Her heart beat with both terror and hope. For the first time, She let herself believe in a future that did not exist yet. A future that might cost everything, but was worth every risk. The sun rose heavy over the estate the next morning. Its golden light stretched across the white stone walls, but there was no warmth in it. The air itself seemed sharp, carrying whispers and suspicion. Daniel felt it as soon as he stepped into the courtyard. The masters had called for an inspection. They sat tall in their jeweled chairs while the guards marched the maids into rows. Each maid stood with her head bowed, their glowing silver eyes fixed on the ground. Silence filled the air. Daniel stood with the other human workers at the edge. His eyes searched for Lyra when he saw her. His chest tightened. She looked pale, her hands trembling slightly at her sides. She dared not look up, but he could feel the weight pressing on her as much as it pressed on him. One of the masters rose. His golden robe shimmered as he spoke in a booming voice. There are whispers in these halls, whispers of disobedience, whispers of affection where none should exist. His words cut like blades through the silent courtyard. The guards' glowing staffs thudded against the ground. The sound made every maid flinch. The master continued, "We will remind you of the law. A maid who dares show her heart will lose it. A maid who dares seek love will lose more than chains. She will lose her place, her light, and her very name." Daniel's fist clenched at his sides. He felt his anger burn, but he forced himself to stay still. His gaze flicked to Lyra. She trembled, her lips pressed tight. He knew she feared that the whispers were about her, about them. When the inspection ended, the maids were dismissed back to their duties, but the unease did not fade. Guards lingered near the halls, their eyes sharp. Every sound of footsteps felt like a threat. Every shadow felt alive that night. Daniel found himself pacing in his small room. The warnings of the masters echoed in his head. He knew something was coming. He knew the rule had teeth. He could feel the danger closing in like a tightening noose. Then came the knock, soft at first, but urgent. He opened the door to find the older maid standing there. Her face lined with worry. Her voice shook. "They suspect her. The whispers have reached the masters. They will test her soon." Daniel's blood ran cold. "Test her? What does that mean?" The old maid looked away. "They will call her to the great hall. They will question her. They will watch her eyes. Her voice, her hands, if she falters, if they see even one sign of affection, she will be punished before all." Daniel's jaw tightened, his voice low and hard. "Then I will not let it happen." The older maid's eyes widened. "You cannot stop it, human, if you step forward. They will cast you out, or worse, they will destroy you as well." But Daniel shook his head. "If silence is survival, then what life is left? I will not watch her be broken." The old maid's face softened for a moment. Her eyes glistened. She whispered, "You sound like the one I once loved." He too thought he could change the rule. He too stood tall. "And I lost him." She turned away quickly, leaving him with the weight of her warning. The next day the summons came. The guards entered the servant quarters and called out Lyra's name. Her heart nearly stopped at the sound. Every maid turned their head slightly, pity and fear flashing in their eyes. Daniel watched from the shadows as they led her away. His heart pounded, his hands shook, he wanted to run forward, but the guards' glowing staffs kept him frozen. He could only follow at a distance. Hidden among the crowd in the great hall, the masters sat in their high chairs. Lyra stood before them, trembling. The golden light from the ceiling stones fell across her silver hair. She looked small, fragile, yet her eyes tried to remain calm. The master's voice thundered, "We hear whispers. Whispers of a maid who dares forget her place. Tell us, girl, do you harbor thoughts forbidden? Do you speak words unallowed? Do you dare dream of love?" Lyra's heart raced, her lips parted, but no sound came. She could feel every gaze piercing her skin. She could feel the air growing heavy. She wanted to deny, to say no. But her chest burned with truth she could not erase. Daniel stood at the edge, hidden among the workers. His blood boiled. He saw her trembling. He saw the chains of fear crushing her. And in that moment he knew. The choice was his. If he stayed silent, she would break. If he spoke, everything would change. The master leaned closer, his eyes narrow. "Answer, girl, or we will take your silence as guilt." Lyra's hands shook. Her lips formed words she could not speak. Fear swallowed her voice. A tear slipped down her cheek. And before she could fall, Daniel stepped forward. His voice rang through the hall, steady and strong. "Enough," he said. "If you want punishment, then take me. For it was I who broke your rule. It was I who showed her kindness. And I will not be silent. The hall gasped. The guards raised their staffs. The master's eyes widened in fury, and Lyra's heart stopped. For the human had chosen danger. He had chosen her. The estate was alive with noise the next day. The masters prepared for a grand feast. Their laughter echoed in the halls while the maids rushed silently, carrying trays, polishing the glowing stones, and laying silk banners across the walls. Daniel watched the rush with curious eyes. He saw how every maid moved quickly but without expression, as if their faces had been carved from stone. Among them his eyes found Lyra again. She carried a heavy barrel of water with trembling arms, her back bent under the weight. Daniel could see she was struggling, but no one moved to help her. The other maids kept their heads low. Afraid to interfere, Daniel clenched his jaw. He remembered the old maid's warning. He remembered Lyra's whisper, "Don't care for me. It will destroy you," but he could not stay still. Something inside him pushed forward. He stepped toward her. His hands gripped the barrel before it slipped from hers. She gasped softly. Her silver eyes widened. She whispered sharply, "No, stop." "They will see." Daniel ignored her fear. "Let me help." "You'll hurt yourself." His voice was calm but firm. Together they carried the barrel to the courtyard fountain. The water splashed inside as it was poured. Lyra's hands shook. She looked around nervously, expecting a master to appear, expecting punishment to fall. But no one came. For a moment there was silence. She turned her head slightly toward him. Her lips moved slowly as if the word itself was forbidden. "Thank you." Daniel gave a faint smile. "You don't need to thank me for being human." Her breath caught at his words. Something stirred deep inside her chest. Something she had buried for years. The sound of kindness, the feeling of being seen. But the silence did not last. A shadow passed across the courtyard. Another maid, older and stern, had seen everything. Her eyes narrowed. She quickly turned and disappeared into the halls. Lyra froze, her heart pounded. "We are doomed," she whispered. Daniel frowned. "For helping you?" "You do not understand," she said, her voice trembling. "One kindness is enough, they will think. They will think love has begun." Daniel stared at her, confused and angry. "And what if it has? What crime is that?" Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "To them, it is the greatest crime of all." That night, when the feast ended and the estate grew quiet, Lyra sat alone near the servants' quarters. Her hands were folded tightly in her lap. She could not stop replaying the moment in her mind, his hands steadying the barrel, his voice speaking with warmth. It was dangerous, it was forbidden.
Yet it felt like light in endless darkness. Daniel found her there.
He sat on the stone bench beside her, careful but steady. She turned her face away, but he said softly, "You should not carry so much weight alone." "No one should," her voice cracked. "You must stop. You must forget me." "I cannot," he said simply, "because when I see you, I see someone who deserves more than chains." Her body trembled. She had no words. No one had ever said such a thing to her. She had lived her whole life believing she was nothing but a servant. Yet here was this human, telling her she deserved freedom. The sound of footsteps broke the moment. Both turned quickly. An older maid stood in the shadows, her face pale with fear. She stepped closer and whispered harshly, "Do you wish to die, both of you? Do you not know the eyes that watch these halls?" Daniel's hand curled into a fist. "Then let them watch. Kindness is not a crime." The old maid shook her head. "Here it is worse than a crime. It is rebellion. And rebellion is punished with fire." She hurried away, leaving the warning like a blade in the air. Lyra's chest rose and fell quickly. Fear shook her voice. "Why do you not listen? You will be cast out, or worse." Daniel looked at her, his voice steady but burning with resolve. "Because I cannot unsee you, I cannot unhear you. You are more than what they want you to be. And if no one else will say it, then I will." Lyra's lips trembled. A single tear slid down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away, ashamed, for even tears were dangerous. But something in her heart had shifted. She felt it. The forbidden rule was already cracking. Later that night, she lay in her small room, staring at the ceiling. Her heart beat in strange rhythms. Half of her was filled with terror. What if the masters discovered this? The other half was filled with warmth. What if this human was the one who could change everything? And far across the estate, Daniel lay awake too, his thoughts heavy. He had not meant to start a rebellion, but maybe rebellion had already started the moment he chose to be kind. The rule was still there, heavy like an iron gate, but now, In the silent darkness, a tiny door had been opened. The next morning came heavy with silence. The estate buzzed with activity, yet an invisible weight pressed down on every corner. Daniel felt it as he walked through the courtyard. The air itself seemed tense. As if the walls carried whispers, Lyra was nowhere to be seen. The other maids worked as usual, their faces empty, their eyes lowered. But Daniel could sense something had changed. He could feel eyes following him, suspicious and cold. Finally, he spotted her near the garden wall, scrubbing silver trays that glowed faintly under the sun. Her movements were quick, almost frantic. Her head remained bowed. She looked like a bird trying to make itself small. Invisible, Daniel walked closer. His voice was soft. Lyra, she flinched at the sound of her name. Her silver eyes lifted for only a second, then dropped back down. You must not speak to me today, she whispered. Not in the open, Daniel frowned. Why? Did something happen? Her lips trembled. They know. Or at least they suspect. A maid saw us last night. She will tell the others, and soon the masters will hear. The words struck him like stone. He clenched his fists. For what? For helping you carry water? For treating you like a person? Lyra shook her head quickly, fear filling her face. Do not speak like that. If they hear you, they will mark you as dangerous, and you will vanish like the others. Daniel leaned closer, his voice low. Then tell me what really happens to them. The ones who vanish, her hands stilled on the tray, her eyes shimmered with pain. They are taken to the great hall. Their names are stripped away. Their light is dimmed until their eyes stop glowing. They are cast beyond the gates, never to return. She swallowed hard. No one speaks of them again. It is as if they never existed. Daniel's chest burned with anger. He wanted to shout, to break the walls around him, but Lyra's trembling told him silence was their only shield. For now, later that evening, when the work was done and shadows grew long, the older maid appeared again. Her face looked carved with fear. Her voice was urgent as she pulled Daniel aside. You foolish human, do you not see? You walk toward fire with open arms. Daniel met her sharp gaze. I only gave kindness. Is that fire? Her lips tightened. Here it is. The masters watch everything. They do not forgive softness. They believe it breeds rebellion, and rebellion burns the estate. Daniel's voice grew hard. And you? You accept this? You watch young women crushed under rules and do nothing. Her eyes glistened. For a moment she looked not stern but broken. I have survived because I learned to be silent. I once spoke out, I once cared too much, and I watched the one I loved dragged away before my eyes. Daniel's breath caught. The old maid turned away, her voice shaking. If you care for her, if you care for yourself, stay away. Let the rule bury your feelings, or the rule will bury you both. She left him standing in the dark hallway, the echo of her words ringing like a curse. That night, Daniel found himself unable to sleep. He stared at the ceiling of his small room, his heart heavy with anger and confusion. He thought of Lyra's silver eyes, the way her voice trembled when she whispered thanks. He thought of the old maid's pain, her warning, her loss. Is silence really survival, or is it another kind of death? The next day, the masters announced a gathering. The maids were lined up in the courtyard. Standing straight, eyes lowered, the masters stood tall above them, their golden crowns catching the sun. One of them spoke in a booming voice. We remind all who serve of the sacred law, the rule that has kept this estate strong for centuries. Servants are not to form bonds, not to show affection, not to dream of love. His gaze swept over the crowd like a blade. Daniel's jaw tightened as he stood with the other human workers at the edge. The masters continued. Any who dare break this law will be punished. Their light will be dimmed forever. Let this warning be remembered. The silence that followed was suffocating. No one dared move. No one dared breathe. But Daniel could not keep his eyes from drifting toward Lyra. She stood among the maids, her silver eyes hidden, her hands trembling slightly at her side. She did not look at him, but he felt the connection anyway. Two souls bound by a secret they could not speak. That night, when the estate was quiet and the moon shone high, Daniel found Lyra near the edge of the garden again. She looked at him with fear, but also with something else, longing. You heard the warning, she said softly. You saw what they said, now you must leave me. Please, Daniel shook his head slowly, his eyes steady. I heard it, I saw it, and it only makes me certain this rule is meant to be broken. Lyra's breath caught, Her heart raced. She wanted to believe. She wanted to trust, but fear wrapped chains around her soul. Still, in the quiet of that night, with no one else to see, she whispered the words she thought she would never say. Then we are already doomed. The alien estate was huge, with shining walls made from white stone that glowed faintly under the moons. Inside those walls lived many servants, all alien women with soft skin that shimmered like glass and eyes that glowed in the dark. They were called the Maids. They cleaned, they cooked, they washed, and they served without a word. But there was one rule above all others, a cruel law that chained them tighter than iron shackles. They were never allowed to love, never allowed to smile at one another with warmth, never allowed to whisper words of care or show desire for freedom. The masters, tall creatures with golden crowns on their heads, had written that law centuries ago. They believed love made the maids weak. They believed feelings broke obedience, so they banned it completely. Any maid who dared to fall in love was punished in front of the whole estate. The punishment was not spoken of loudly, but every maid knew it. A maid caught showing affection would be dragged to the great hall. Her glowing eyes would be dimmed with cold fire, and she would be sent away, never to be seen again. The others would watch, trembling in silence, learning once again that love was forbidden. Among the servants was a young maid named Lyra. Her hair shimmered silver in the moonlight, and her steps were light as falling snow. She never spoke more than a whisper. Her eyes always looked down, never daring to meet another's gaze. But inside her heart she carried a secret wish. She longed for someone to see her as more than a servant. She longed for someone to care. That night the estate grew restless. Rumors spread. A new worker had arrived. But he was not alien like them. He was human. The human's name was Daniel. He had come to work the estate's outer grounds, to fix machines that powered the water channels. Unlike the aliens, his skin was rough. His hands were scarred from labor, and his eyes carried a strange fire. He did not know about the forbidden rule. He only knew he had been given food, a bed, and work to do on his first morning. Daniel walked across the courtyard. He watched the maids moving silently, their steps smooth and their faces empty of emotion. It felt strange they were alive, yet they looked like shadows, not daring to breathe freely. As he worked, his gaze fell upon Lyra. She carried a heavy basket filled with shining stones used to light the halls. Her arms trembled under the weight, but no one moved to help her. The other maids simply lowered their heads. Afraid to break the silence, Daniel frowned without thinking. He stepped forward and steadied the basket with his strong hand. For a brief moment their eyes met. Her breath caught. Her glowing silver eyes widened in shock. No one was allowed to look at her like that. No one was allowed to touch her so kindly. Her hands shook, and she almost dropped the basket quickly. She lowered her head and whispered so softly he barely heard. "Thank you." It was the first word she had spoken to him, and it was the first time anyone had dared to break the silent chains of the rule. But hidden eyes were watching. An older maid across the hall froze. Her lips pressed tight with fear. She had seen the human help. She had seen the girl whisper, and she knew what such a thing could mean. Later that night, when the moonlight filled the halls, the older maid came to Daniel. Her voice was low and shaking as she warned him. "You must not do that again. You do not know the law here. Alien maids are forbidden to love, forbidden to feel, forbidden to speak such words. If you keep looking at her like that, both of you will be destroyed." Daniel's brow furrowed. He had heard of cruel traditions in the galaxy, but this one seemed beyond reason. Why would anyone forbid love? Why punish kindness? He looked back toward the dark halls where Lyra walked silently with her glowing eyes lowered. His heart tightened for the first time. He felt a dangerous thought forming inside him. Maybe the rule was meant to be broken. Daniel woke early the next morning. The estate was quiet except for the soft sounds of water flowing through the stone channels. The alien maids moved like shadows across the courtyard, their silver eyes lowered, their hands busy with endless work. Not a laugh, not a whisper, only silence. He kept noticing one maid among them, Lyra. Her movements were graceful but heavy with fear. She avoided every gaze, keeping her eyes hidden. Daniel thought about what the older maid had told him. A forbidden rule. A cruel law that chained hearts and silenced voices. He could not understand why anyone would live like this. Still, he tried to push it from his mind. He worked on the water pumps, fixing gears with strong hands, but his eyes always drifted back toward her, and each time he saw the same thing. her eyes full of something trapped, something locked away. When the sun set that day, the maids gathered to serve dinner for the masters. They moved in lines, carrying trays of glowing fruit and steaming bowls. The masters sat high at their table, laughing with heavy voices. They did not look at the maids. Not once. To them, the maids were tools, not people. Daniel noticed Lyra stumble as she placed a tray down. The weight was too much, her arms trembling. The tray tilted, and for one terrifying second it almost fell. She caught it just in time, but her body shook. The master's eyes narrowed. He did not punish her, not this time, but his glare was enough to make her bow low with fear. The room went silent. Daniel clenched his fists under the table where he sat with the other workers. He wanted to rise, to speak, but the warning from the older maid echoed in his mind. That night, when the halls were empty, Daniel found himself walking near the servant quarters. He saw her again, sitting on a stone bench with her head lowered. Her long silver hair fell like a curtain hiding her face. He stepped closer. His voice was soft. "Are you all right?" Her shoulders stiffened. She did not look up. Instead, she whispered, "Please don't speak to me." Her voice was thin, almost broken. Daniel frowned. "Why? What harm is there in words?" Slowly, she lifted her face. Their eyes met again. Her silver eyes glowed faintly under the moonlight, but there was sorrow in them, deep sorrow. "They will see," she said. "They always see." Daniel glanced around. The courtyard was empty. Shadows stretched long. He shook his head. "No one is here." For a long moment, she simply stared at him. Her lips parted as if she wanted to say more, but fear held her back. Finally, she lowered her head again and whispered, "You should not care for me, human. If you do, it will destroy you too." Those words struck him. Why would care? Why would kindness? Why would simple human compassion be called destruction? It made no sense. He wanted to ask more, but her trembling hands told him enough. She was terrified over the next few days. Daniel tried to keep his distance, but it was impossible. Every time he saw her, his chest tightened. Every time their eyes accidentally met, he saw that spark, something fragile, hidden but alive. One evening, while carrying tools back from the outer fields, he passed near the gardens where the maids washed the master's robes in glowing water. He spotted Lyra kneeling at the stream. Her hands dipped into the water as the robes floated like silver sheets. She glanced up and their eyes locked for just a second. Her breath caught and she quickly turned away. But in that one moment, Daniel saw it. The truth in her eyes, the silent scream, the plea for something more than chains. Later that night, the older maid found him again, her face hard, her voice shaking. "You are a fool, human. You do not know the punishments. I have seen maids dragged away for less. One glance, one word. One smile is enough to condemn her." Daniel's jaw tightened. "And what of you? You've lived under this rule your whole life. You accept it?" The old maid's eyes glistened. She looked away. "Acceptance is survival. It is better to live in silence than to vanish in chains." Daniel turned his head toward the dark corridors. His heart burned. He thought of Lyra's trembling voice, her whispered warning, her silent eyes. He could not accept this. He could not accept that love itself was a crime. That night, as the moons rose high, he sat awake on his bed, his fists clenched. He whispered to himself, "If no one else will break this rule, maybe I will." And in another part of the estate, Lyra lay awake too, staring at the ceiling. Her heart beat fast for the first time in her life. Someone had looked at her as more than a servant. Someone had seen her eyes, and that terrified her more than any punishment could.